Recorded. Okay. So first thing is that your project over the stuff that we started learning last week and we'll continue talking about today and Thursday is due next Wednesday night. Okay. Now, presumably you're going to have stuff due for other classes. You're going to have tests to study for next week, stuff like that. So I would encourage you to go ahead and take advantage. Excuse me. Go ahead and take advantage of the fact that you have this time now to to work on it during flex time after you finish the quiz. Next class, I'm not going to give you a quiz, and so that'll give you more time than flex time to work on your project. And so yeah, that's the big thing. Next Thursday, I will assign your last major grade, which will be another project related to this one. So kind of like we did last cycle. It's very much a part one and part two. It'll have a different name, but it'll use some of the same themes, the same research that you did before to continue into another project. Okay, so don't just throw away all your research after you're done with this first project, because I want you to be able to use that for your next project. Okay, but it's all about expanding your business into new markets. And that's what we're going to focus on today. So, okay. If you remember, we talked about business internationalization last time, right? We talked about the factors that you would use to determine whether or not you should expand into a new market. So we're going to go over those again briefly to talk about the things that you take into consideration, right? And we're gonna spend a little more time on that, and then we're going to expand and do some examples on the marketing strategies. Okay, so basically we're going to expand on the two things we talked about last time. All right, so first, business internationalization. We talked about several factors to keep in mind, right, when expanding into a new market. Okay, and other things we talked about, population size. Okay, why might population size be an issue when deciding to expand into a new market? Any ideas? Because you want people to buy your stuff. Exactly, right? Like if you're selling washing machines, typically that's going to be like one per family, right? If you expand to a market where there aren't a whole lot of families, then you're not going to sell a whole lot of washing machines. Doesn't matter if every single person in that market can afford your stuff. If there just aren't that many of them, then doesn't matter, right? Okay, good. Thank you, Ms. Sampson. You don't just care about the number of people, though. You also care about the demographics, and that's going to include all sorts of things. But the things that you're really going to care about in demographics are going to be age. Okay, not every country has the same distribution of population. All right, so an example of that would be, say, China has, or not China, excuse me. Japan has a very older skewed population. There aren't a whole lot of young people in Japan, right? They are not replacing people. Oh, it's weird. My shoulder disappeared. They're not replacing people as fast as they need to, and so their population skews older. And so, if you're marketing something for teenagers, Japan has plenty of people, but maybe not a whole lot of teenagers. Okay. Whereas there are certain other countries in Asia, especially India, where there are lots of young people, and where if you're marketing something to teenagers, you're much more likely to find teenagers in that area. All right, so age is a big one. Okay, culture, and we're actually going to do a whole unit on culture after this one. Okay, where we start talking about the factors you consider when doing business with other countries culturally, right? But big ones there would be, things like religion, things like prevailing attitudes, uh, things that are respectful and not respectful, language. Okay, right? There's a lot of factors that go into culture, but all of them will affect how much you're willing to sell or able to sell, right? So, for example, if you're if you're Oscar Mayer Meat Company, right? Oscar Mayer makes bologna and hot dogs and all these other things. You might not want to take that business into India or the Middle East, right? Where there's not a lot of people who would eat pork products, right? But if you choose to go into that market anyway, then you're going to want to change your product, right? So this is kind of a hint of reasons you might use a regional marketing strategy. So we'll get back to that in a second. Demographics, you're also going to care about purchasing power. So money. Okay. So purchasing power is basically how much can they buy? How much extra income do they have on a regular basis? So an example of that is in the United States, most people fall in the kind of the middle class area, right, where they make a certain amount for a family of four, but not a whole lot. And with that money, they can not just pay for food and clothing and shelter, but they can also pay for a lot of extra stuff, right? A lot of Americans have their own car. Well, there are a lot of countries where people don't own cars, meaning they don't have to spend the money to pay for the cars. They don't have to pay for gasoline, for upkeep, for a place to store cars, so they can get homes without garages, right? They can get instead they'll pay for public transportation, and in a lot of places, even public transportation is cheap or free, right? So they might have less purchasing power, and therefore they don't buy things like cars. Pretty much every American has a cell phone. Well, you know what? Cell phones are not free, right? You have to pay for the cell phone, and then you have to pay for the service. Even some of the poorest Americans have cell phones, and they're paying, a lot of money every month for cell phone service, right? With internet access included. A lot of Americans have lots of subscription services, even among more poor Americans, lower middle class or upper lower class, right? Where we have cable, internet, even most of the poorest Americans have air conditioned where it's needed. Maybe not up north, but in the southern part of the U.S., right? We pretty much water. I'm not saying everybody. There are obviously people who are less fortunate, but when you consider how that translates to other parts of the world, it's not the same, right? The poorest people in, say, India don't have running water, electricity, plumbing. Well, that's running water, internet access, cable TV, that sort of thing, right? So the purchasing power of a person in different parts of the world is really going to affect where you're going to want to sell your products. If your product's a necessity, right? Like hygiene products or food products or clothing, then you might be able to expand even into markets that have lower purchasing power because that's what they're spending their money on, right? But if your item is a luxury like an iPhone, you might not spend a whole lot of time going to places that don't have a lot of people that can afford it. Okay, and that's something your business has to consider as it's making these decisions on where to expand to. Now, a caveat about India: India has so many people that even though there's lots of people who can't afford cell phones, there are still lots of people. There are enough people who can that you're still going to want to expand it, right? India is an interesting example in that one. But somewhere with the same demographics of India, but a lower population size, you wouldn't necessarily want to expand into. And that's why population size and demographics are going to be different. Okay. Different considerations. What the heck? I typed money and it changed it to a money sign. Weird. Okay. All right, that's where we're going to focus on demographics. Other things you might want to consider, right? Exchange rates and regulations. I'm going to focus on regulations. Your exchange rates for you won't necessarily matter. You care more about the stability of the exchange rates, because if the exchange rates are constant, then you have a stable, it's the same. $1 is equal to 0.8 euros or whatever, and it is what it is. You're going to sell it for the equivalent factor in the other country and then exchange it into the money you need. But if the exchange rates are constantly fluctuating wildly, then you don't want to do that, right? You want to go somewhere where you can make sure that your goods don't become too cheap or too expensive. Trade regulations, right? All the stuff that we've talked about up to now are things you consider, right? We weren't just talking about those things in a vacuum. But for example, if you make cars, you're more likely to want to expand into a place that doesn't regulate cars a whole lot versus one that does. Because if they do, there's probably a lot of things you need to do that you need to change, or it's going to become more expensive in order for you to expand into that market, right? Likewise with environmental regulations, tariffs, quotas, all these things. The lower the regulations, the lower the barriers to trade, both direct and indirect, the more likely it is that you can successfully expand into that market. Right. And then the last one that we really talked about in this class was competition. Chances are you aren't the only person making a product like this. And if that's the case, chances are you're not the only company looking around and going, what's available to me? What's the demographics? What are the population size? Who can afford what I'm selling? And so you have to look at, is the place overly competitive? Is it too competitive? Are there companies with a stranglehold on the market that's going to be overly expensive to get into that market and get people to switch? How easy is it to get people to switch? All right. Now, let me tell you a hint, something that people won't tell you. Okay, but this is an important just business concept in general, even if you're not going international. If you're in a business that's common, right? You're not brand new, but your product has existed a while. So for example, I sell dice, right, online, and dice have been around for centuries, millennia, right? Dice are not new. Anyone who wants dice can go to Walmart and buy a pack of dice for $1, right? This is a highly competitive market. But the truth is, you don't want to go anywhere where there's no competition at all for a product like that. Because if there's no competition, that means other people have looked at that market and decided that people aren't buying. Right? So if I'm looking at a market and there's no one selling dice there, that might be because no one's buying dice there. Okay. Now I'd want to look into research that and make sure that I'm right? Because look, if people are willing to buy dice and there's just no one selling, you really want to go there. That's awesome. That's perfect for you, right? But it's important that you consider, why isn't anyone else here if it looks like such a juicy market? Okay. So there are the factors you want to consider. Hopefully this expanded that for you. These factors are what your first project is about, right? You're looking at, you're a company based in the United States, you make a product, you're looking at 3 new markets and determining, how do these factors stack up for you? Do you want to expand into them? Right? Does that make sense so far? Like that's what you're doing? Any questions about these factors? Thank you, Ms. Sampson. I appreciate you paying attention. Any questions about any of these factors, things that don't make sense, things that you want me to explain more? Okay. So I want to spend the rest of our class going over the global marketing strategy and regional marketing strategies that we talked about before. Okay. And one thing I want y'all to realize is that we're discussing it as global and regional because this class is global business, but it's actually the same considerations on a very local scale. Okay. So if I have a company based in Houston, let's say I go open a store down the street, right? And since I sell dice, let's say I opened a gaming store right down the street where you could buy different games and gaming accessories and play mats and whatever. Okay. Let's say you're a big nerd and you want to come shop at my store. All right. So why do I keep disappearing? That's weird. Okay. So now let's say that I open that store, and really right at that moment, I'm not going to advertise to people in Dallas or in Austin or in New Orleans, right? Because they're not going to drive several hours to come to my store. They have their own stores in their own areas, right? And I'm probably, if it's down the road here, I'm probably not advertising to people in the Woodlands or to people, probably not even to people in Katy, certainly not people in Pearland or on the or even North Houston or East Houston, right? I really want to target my advertising to people right around me, right? And so I can get my advertising really focused on the people in this area. And looking at all those factors, I could, this is a pretty densely populated area. If I'm trying to decide what languages to put my ads in, it's going to be different here versus some other market, right? Like I might really focus on Arabic and Vietnamese, whereas I might not do that in other parts of town even. Okay. What we're talking about here is a regional marketing strategy. And in this case, my region is this very local part of Houston where I really want people to stop by my store, play games, and buy stuff, right? Now, let's suppose I want to expand. And so I open up something across town. Okay. I now not only have to put a store there, I also have to choose, I have to get people to come to that store, meaning I need to advertise, market, maybe hire salespeople, right? Well, I have 2 options when I do this. Okay, I can either run the same ads that I run over here, over there. If I do that, that's a global marketing strategy. Okay. Global marketing strategy, running basically the same ads with the same product across multiple markets. Okay, that's the global marketing strategy, where you basically keep your ads the same. You might change, you might change your labeling requirements depending on different regulations. You might change, the language that things are written in, but you don't really change your main focus, right? Your ads are the same, but with different voice actors. Your ads are the same, but in different language, or whatever. But global marketing strategy is I do the same thing. So basically, I open up another store, let's say in Pasadena, on the other side of town, and over there I run the same ads that I run over here. Okay. I might even try to catch everybody at once and start running ads in the Chronicle, right? Or on start running ads at Rockets games or Texans games, right? Where people on both sides of town will see it. I might put a billboard on I-10. Okay, so I will expand my marketing to cover the whole area, but I don't change anything. If I don't change anything, that's a global marketing strategy, right? Now I have a different option if I want, right? The people living in Pasadena are not the same culturally, they're not the same in purchasing power as the people living on this side of town, right? Over in Pasadena, you have a lot of chemical plants, a lot of factory workers, okay? The diversity as far as languages spoken is a lot less. Over here, we've got tons of different languages, right? Tons and tons, right? You've got Turkish over here, you've got Vietnamese, you've got Korean, you've got Arabic, right? I think you have Farsi. It's a pretty culturally diverse area, and I might be running ads in all these things. If I go over to the Pasadena side of town, I'm probably looking more Mandarin, okay, and actually mostly English, right? The minorities who live in Pasadena speak different languages than the ones who live over here, right? Those are things you got to consider because they're not just different in language, right? They're also going to be different about what sorts of games they play, right? If I'm selling gaming accessories, I have to keep that in mind. They're going to be different in as far as you know what they're willing to what sorts of things excite them about gaming accessories, right? Different cultural icons, things like that, right? There's a lot. Now I haven't, right? I haven't done that sort of thing. I run ads on Facebook. I have a national marketing strategy. It's the only thing I do. So I haven't done the research to look at a regional marketing strategy for the stuff I'm talking about. But I'm trying to give you some of the considerations if I were going to research this, okay? So a regional marketing strategy would be like me running different ads here versus in Pasadena, right? And especially, let's say I expand and I start selling stuff in New York. I have the choice. I can run the same ads and sell the same products in Houston and New York, right? Hold on. Completing the notes in the chat here. Okay, so run different ads with different products at different prices across different markets. The different prices one is one I want you to consider. People in New York make a lot more money than people in Houston because the cost of living is higher. So their purchasing power is not higher, but the cost of living means that they might make more and then spend more on food and clothing and shelter and stuff, right? But imagine this. Imagine each side has 10% of their income left over to spend on stuff. Normally, that 10% of their income would buy the same amount of stuff, right? Because, right, everything's priced differently. But if I'm selling stuff from here in Houston to people there in New York, that 10% will buy more of my product. That would, if I was using a global marketing strategy, or I could sell it for more there. And it represents the same percentage of their income, and they might be willing to spend more as a result. Okay, so a regional marketing strategy doesn't just look at different products or different ads, but also even different prices, right? Different packaging, all sorts of different stuff. Okay, and obviously, right? If I'm trying to hit different languages in New York, you know, I'm gonna especially focus on things like Italian, Spanish. I obviously run ads in Spanish here too. Right, there's a lot more Chinese spoken in New York than in Houston. Okay, things like that. So you can focus on those different aspects of things to try to appeal to people in different places, right? The types of games they play in New York are different than the types of games they play in Houston. And these differences get bigger and bigger the further out you go. Okay. So you can be like Coca-Cola, just basically do the same thing everywhere. And so I want to reiterate some of the times you would choose one over the other, because that's what your quiz for today is about. Okay. So the benefits of a global marketing strategy, right? Let's just look at my dice business as an example. And if I'm just focusing right here in the West Houston, and I decide to expand to Pasadena, if I run the same ads, that means that was really cheap for me. I didn't have to come up with new ads. I didn't have to write new ads. I didn't have to take new pictures or videos. All I did was put them somewhere else. I still have to pay for the new ad placement, but the cost to run those same ads in additional places is a lot cheaper than coming up with new ads, right? Or especially a lot cheaper than developing new products for that area, right? So global marketing strategy is much cheaper. Much cheaper on a per ad basis. Okay. They provide a lot of crossover. So let's say I have a customer who comes into my store all the time, right? And they love it here. They buy stuff from me regularly. They come to hang out. When they go to Pasadena and want to find a store there, if they see my ads and my store, they're likely to go in there because they already recognize my store and my brand, right? Whereas if I came up with a new name for the store and was running different ads, they may not choose me because they don't know who I am, even though they know me from this other store, right? So global marketing strategies can help you build name recognition, especially among travelers. So this travelers concept, think tourist areas, right? If I'm a product that I sell, if my company sells a lot in tourist areas, Cabo San Lucas, Cozumel, Key West, right, Padre Island, all these places where there's a lot of tourists, I probably want to use a global marketing strategy so that no matter where they go, they see the same stuff and they know to buy that, right? That's like Trader Joe's. Although Trader Joe's has kind of they started adding they changed their name to the various languages, but all their signage is the same. All their the products they sell are basically the same. Their style of advertising is the same, and they just changed the name Trader Joe's to something that means Trader Joe's in the language they're in, right? That's kind of their thing. So Hard Rock Cafe, right? Same thing. They're all over the world, and everywhere you go, I've been to I think 12 different Hard Rock cafes in at least 5 different countries, all the same. You walk in, they sell the same kinds of food. They have the same decorating style where they put famous instruments and pictures of musicians and all this stuff. Same atmosphere everywhere you go, right? And so that's a global marketing strategy because they are specifically in tourist areas, right? So think tourism. Okay. It builds comfort as well. All right. On the flip side, right? Why might I choose a regional marketing strategy? I realize it's 9 o'clock, so I'm gonna wrap up soon. Okay. But why would I choose a regional marketing strategy? Well, kind of all the stuff I talked about earlier about how the cultures are different, the people are different, the games people play are different, right? If I want to if I want to get the same level of sales in a new market as I am currently getting in my old market, I should probably tweak my marketing to take into account their differences. So regional marketing strategies take into account regional differences in demographics and can get more sales per ad because of that. Right? So your target audience might be the same kind of person in each region, right? In each country or each city or whatever you're targeting here. But even the same kind of person is going to be different in a different country, right? They'll speak a different language. They'll probably be of a different religion. They probably eat different kinds of food. They probably watch different kinds of movies, listen to different kinds of music, right? If you're, well, let me give you an example, right? If you're in Houston, Travis Scott is a big deal, right? You might put Travis Scott music in your ads, get him to sponsor you. That's not going to work in China. They don't care about Travis Scott, right? You might go to South Korea. They don't care about Travis Scott, but they might care about BTO. But that's going to be a regional marketing strategy, right? Trying to choose who's going to sponsor my product and what kind of music am I going to use to get people interested, right? That's the idea. Okay. So you're going to get more sales per ad. It's more culturally sensitive. You're not going to offend people if you're doing research on that. But it does mean you have to develop a new ad for each region you move into, and which makes it more expensive. So you have to try to measure the trade-offs there. Okay. So your last project, which is not up yet, I'm going to put it up Thursday. But your last project for this cycle will be to look at the countries that you are researching now for this project and determining, are you going to use a regional marketing strategy or a global marketing strategy? Okay. You might choose a global marketing strategy if the places are very similar culturally and have similar demographics. And you probably are going to want to use a regional marketing strategy if they are so different culturally that what you do in one country may not really work in the other. Okay. So you will be putting this in practice. Okay, any questions about regional versus global marketing strategies? Yes, question about the project. Awesome, go ahead. You can use Coke. Yeah, you can use any, you can use an existing company and product, yes. But you may also make one up. Some people have more fun that way, saying, pretending they started a company and they're going to look up and they're going to make up the product that they're selling. Okay, but you can choose an existing product, absolutely. Good question. Any other questions? Okay. Well, then there is a quiz for you. It's 7 questions, but they're all very easy. They're all, is this a global marketing strategy or a regional marketing strategy, right? Which should you choose in this situation? So there's 7 of those. So do those, and then you're on flex time, or you're on flex time now. And so work on your project after that. Okay. Spend the rest of your flex time working on your project, and I'll be here if you have questions. All right. So it's good to see y'all after so long. I will see y'all on Thursday. Have a great day.